Imagine trying to figure out the soul of a whole nation, but doing it from inside a prison cell.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary starting point, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's the backdrop for our deep dive today. We're looking at Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's huge work, The Discovery of India.
A massive undertaking.
Totally. And it's not just, a history book. It feels much more like a personal quest trying to grasp what India really is. We found it fascinating, and we want to unpack it for you.
And the context, like you said, the PRISM context is key. He wrote this between 1942 and 45. He was imprisoned by the British in Ahmednagar Fort.
Right into the thick of the freedom struggle.
Exactly. And it came out in 1946, just as India was nearing independence. His goal, as he stated it, was pretty ambitious. He wanted to really explore India's huge history, its culture, philosophy.
Everything.
And what he saw as this unity running through all its diversity. It was his way of figuring out, what is India?
So our mission here is to explore those main ideas, the big revelations, and the vision Nehru had. We want to help you get a handle on this really complex, very personal look at India's identity. Maybe you understand Nehru himself a bit better, too.
It starts very personally, doesn't it?
It really does. This wasn't just an academic exercise for him. Being locked up, he had time to think, and it seems like he felt this deep need to understand India beyond just, maps and dates.
Right, beyond the geography.
Yeah, into its spirit, its traditions, its whole legacy. It reads like a search for identity, both for himself and for the nation that was about to be born.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Stuck in jail, he turns inward, but also way, way back into history, trying to create this narrative that could connect him and hopefully others to India's essence.
So where does he start this huge quest? Not with recent politics, surprisingly. He goes way back, almost like digging through layers of history.
Yeah, he starts deep.
Okay, so let's unpack what he calls ancient India's glory. He kicks off with the Indus Valley civilization, right? That really early, quite sophisticated urban culture.
Mm-hmm. And he connects that ancient past directly to the spiritual and philosophical stuff that came later. He looks at the Vedas, these, ancient sacred texts, a bedrock of a lot of Indian thought.
And the Upanishads, too.
Yes, the Upanishads, this deep philosophical explorations of reality. Nehru's point isn't just that they existed, but that they created this continuous thread, this intellectual, spiritual backbone for India that somehow still persists.
It's that continuity he seems fascinated by.
Exactly. And then, of course, the big epics, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, he doesn't just see them as old stories.
No, they feel alive in the book.
Very much so. He sees them as shaping morality, shaping culture, even now.
Yeah.
And he also highlights how India generated its own major movements like Buddhism and Jainism.
Right, challenging the status quo from within.
Precisely, showing this internal capacity for change, for philosophical evolution.
But India's story wasn't just internal evolution, as Nehru shows. After setting up these ancient roots, he moves into how India interacted with the outside world, specifically invasions.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, as he puts it.
How did this ancient culture handle wave after wave of people coming in? What did that reveal about India?
Well, he talks about the Greeks, the Scythians, the Huns, later Muslim invasions, the Mughals, a whole series of them. But his main point, his really key insight, is that these invasions didn't just destroy.
They added something.
In his view, yes. They became catalysts. They forced India to adapt, to absorb. And ultimately, he argues, they made Indian culture even richer, more complex. He talks about India's unique ability to unify different cultures.
So absorption and synthesis, rather than just resistance or replacement.
That's the core of his argument there. He sees this process of synthesis, this blending, as fundamental to India's identity. It created something new, something uniquely Indian.
That's a really powerful framing. But thinking about it, when he talks about this synthesis, does he kind of downplay the conflict? I mean, invasions aren't usually peaceful picnics. Was he maybe focusing on unity because he was writing with an independent, unified India in mind?
That's a really fair point. He definitely doesn't ignore conflict entirely. It's there in the history he recounts. But you're right, his main goal in this book, written at that moment,
Yeah, looking towards the future.
was absolutely to find those threads of unity, the things that held India together despite everything. He was trying to build a case for a cohesive nation, one that could embrace all its diverse history, the good and the bad, without, falling apart.
Okay, that makes sense contextually. Now, fast forward quite a bit to a more recent arrival, but one with a massive impact, the British.
Right, the East India Company, and then direct British rule.
Nehru spends a lot of time on this period. And his assessment Well, it's pretty sharp.
Oh, absolutely. From Nehru's perspective, it was an era defined by, and he uses strong words, economic, political, and cultural exploitation.
He doesn't mince words.
Not at all. He details how British policies, as he saw them, deliberately worked to divide Indian society. He really digs into the impact of colonial rule on almost every aspect of Indian life, arguing it wasn't just about resources, but about undermining dignity and self-belief.
And this exploitation, this sense of being undermined, eventually boils over.
Hmm.
Right. He points to the revolt of 1857 as a crucial moment.
Yes, a major turning point. Even though it was put down, he sees it as the real start of widespread conscious rise of nationalism.
The beginning of the end for British rule, in a way.
You could say that. And from there, he talks about the key figures who really drove the freedom struggle forward. Gandhi, obviously, but also Bose, Tilak, Bhagat Singh, and many others.
A whole generation of leaders.
Exactly. And he traces the development of the Indian National Congress, how the movement grew, changed tactics, and became this unstoppable force pushing for independence.
So after walking through millennia of civilization, these waves of invasions and mixing, the trauma of colonialism and then the fight for freedom, where does Nehru land? What's his takeaway about India's spirit, its soul? What's the vision he has, writing from that cell?
Well, his conclusion is actually remarkably hopeful, considering the circumstances. He argues strongly that despite everything, the invasions, the internal divisions, the colonial impact, India has this deep, persistent cultural unity, a kind of resilience he finds truly inspiring.
And looking forward.
His vision for the future he was fighting for, was very clear: a secular, democratic, and progressive India.
Modern principles.
Yes, very much so. He pushes hard for scientific thinking, for rationalism, and crucially, for equal opportunity for every single citizen. He saw those as absolutely vital for India's progress.
It seems like all of that journey, all those thousands of years he covered, leads to this one core idea. There's that quote, right?
Yes, the one that really sums it all up. India is not just a piece of land, but a living civilization shaped by centuries of thought, struggle, diversity, and unity.
Wow. That really does pull it all together.
It does, doesn't it? What's so powerful about that sentence is how it connects everything we've touched on, from the ancient Indus Valley right up to his hopes for modern India. It captures that sense of continuous evolution, adaptation, that ability to absorb and change, yet somehow remain distinctly India.
It's an incredible intellectual journey he took, especially considering, where he was writing it. This deep dive into the discovery of India. Well, we hope it's given you some fresh perspectives on India's incredibly long, complex, but as Nehru saw it, unified story.
Yeah, that idea of a living civilization, not something static or frozen in the past.
Exactly. Constantly changing, absorbing, but with this core identity.
And understanding texts like this, these foundational attempts to define a nation, it really gives you a valuable lens, doesn't it, for looking not just at the past, but how the present and future are shaped.
It shows that cultural resilience, that adaptability, even when things get incredibly tough.
Definitely.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given that this huge work of synthesis, this deep reflection on identity, was written under conditions of, well, extreme confinement and national crisis, what does that tell you? About maybe the human ability to find clarity, to build a vision, even when things are chaotic?
That's a great question.
Perhaps, how do any of us, personally or as a nation, find that kind of deep, unifying understanding amidst all the noise and struggle? Something to think about.